Greetings, your City Minister Nyle Zikmund doing another one of our quarterly updates. So I'm going to talk about three things today: the community center expansion, continued exploration, our stormwater, we're doing a big investment there, and then I also want to talk about introduced organized trash collection. So I'm going to start with the community center expansion. We're still in the exploration stage. The council invested in an economic feasibility study, spent 50 grand. That came back, yes, this would be economically feasible to do an expansion and create a regional youth, amateur sports, and recreation facility. The main component being 3 additional gyms and then all of the accompanying pieces there. We hired an architect, Codet Architects, and a construction firm to get us good estimates. We've hit the market when there's hyperinflation and worker shortage and supply chain issues. And because this would be a 2025 project, you have to build that in. So their range was 28 to 33 million. We're using a 33 million to just be on the safe side. We do have a bonding bill request in. The financing is going to be 50% off state bonding money. So all of your corporate income tax, personal income tax, sales tax, all that money that makes up that state budget, every 2 years they do a bonding bill, and the state then pays those bonds, and you can get half the money. So $16.5 million would come from the state bonding. It's a competitive process. There'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 or $4 billion worth of requests, and they'll maybe do $1.5 to $2 billion. And that's again in the 2024 session, but the bill goes in now. We've hired a lobbyist at $5,000 a month. 47 years their firm has been in the business with a specialty in the bonding area. Libby Law Firm is the name. Bill Straczynski is the principal that's leading the effort on that. We've signed a contract with Morris Leatherman. They're a Minneapolis-based community survey firm, highly regarded. They'll be doing a community survey here in probably June, and it'll be statistically valid. They'll have to reach out to over 2,000 households to get 400 different households from every demographic in doing that piece. There'll be these 6 public meetings, and I'm going to refer to my Mounds View Matters, which came out and had those listed. April 13th and April 18th. So 2 days. We'll do a 10 a.m. meeting. We'll do a 1:30 p.m. meeting and a 7 p.m. right here at the event center. And so this is a question and answer. These are not designed to be debates for or aft, because the other piece of the funding is also a local option sales tax, and we'll explain how that works and where that money comes from. It's not envisioned to do a property tax. It'll be on sales tax, so it's a wider base, if you will. All of that will be explained in more detail at those April meetings, and so you should come to that if you want to hear more. We will have those videotaped and put them up on the air so people can listen. I don't know that we'll do all of them, but we'll try and get as many of them as we can. So again, still in the exploration stage, still looking at everything that we need to do and want to do. A little bit more on the expansion. Yes, it's primarily the 3 gyms. It does completely remodel the front entrance and the reception area. It does add a patio on the north side. The event center gets lots of weddings, lots of requests to have an outdoor space by those brides, if you're wanting that, and an ability to serve alcohol, so it has to be screened from the neighbors. All the parking will be on site. When you look at the site, we have parking to the south side. There are some woods to the south and east. Those are what you call low-grade trees. Those would all be taken out. That would be parking. All the stormwater would be underground. That's one of the things driving that $33 million cost, is just the stormwater too. It adds a walking track above the new gyms. It adds an expanded fitness center, and that is yet to be determined. Will be on the first floor, second floor. It adds more space for seniors. It adds a children's play area. It puts in the locker rooms that need to be area, and then it just refreshes that whole entire lobby front entrance area. So those images have been out there briefly. The second mailing will be coming out next month. That will have much more detail on the what, more of those artists or architects' renditions, and explaining in more detail. And then I put in the last update in the last mailing. If you have questions, you're certainly welcome to email me. You can call me, but you'll get a better response, a more detailed response on an email. But right now we're in the plan and in the program of still exploring this and getting feedback, getting costs, seeing if we can get bonding built. So the next thing I want to talk is about stormwater. And a lot of people, well, stormwater, what's that? That is the next big thing on the horizon. To tell you the importance of it, we're just in the final stages of spending $6 million upgrading our water treatment plants, as is just about every city in the state and the nation's going to have to do, because we keep contaminating our stormwater. So now we have to build better water treatment plants to take all the things we're pouring into the ground. But to make those things work, you have to maintain them. And a lot of these things started in the 70s with the 1972 Legislative Act. And they got built and for the most part, they got ignored, okay? We're not ignoring them anymore. The state's not ignoring them anymore. The watersheds aren't ignoring them anymore. You can't ignore them anymore. So we started over 2 years ago in assessing our entire system. Last year, we contracted with Stantec, they're our city engineer. It's a $160,000 contract for them to survey the ponds. So you have the ditches and the ponds, the ditches and the ponds. The ditches are the highways, they convey the water, but the ponds are the ones that remove all of the sediment, all of the bad chemicals, and then release to the ditches when the water elevation gets high enough and it gets carried away. So the ditches are a big component. The watershed owns them. We just penned an agreement where we're going to start maintaining them. They don't have the staff or the equipment and, quite frankly, the proximity. They're there in our city. We've got public works staff. And so we will be taking over the ditch maintenance here in the next year or two. They've got to get them restored to their 1950 and 60 profile. And from that point on, we'll be maintaining them. The ponds, we completed last summer, fall, and got the preliminary report this winter. So Stantec went and did a forensic survey of the ponds and mostly the sediment and the profile of the bottom, and then compared them to the as-built drawings. And we now have knowledge of which ponds. We know we've got the Arden Ponds and the Silverview Pond and a couple smaller ones down on Silver Lake where we're going to have to do some dredging. And when you do that dredging, then you have to properly get rid of those soils, which could be contaminated. So they'll be doing those sampling and seeing what's there. We hope they're pretty clean, but if you remember the old days of sealing your asphalt, that had some of those forever chemicals in there, and that's bad stuff. And so if we find a lot in there, then the disposal cost on that will escalate a bit, and we'll have to deal with that. The good news is our stormwater rates that you've been paying for years have built up. We've anticipated this. We have a $2 million fund balance in there, which we believe is going to be more than adequate to just deal with what we need to do. We're waiting for the final report from Stantec. And when we get that, it also includes a capital improvement program. Everything we need to do to restore those 19 ponds to their original functionality design back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, in some case 80s. Some people are already coming to us, well, what about the water quality? What about the water quality? That's the next step. Until you get the pond back to its functional operation, working on the water quality is working against yourself, because part of it has to do with the functioning. So for those of you that live around and nearby Silverview Pond, we are going to pull that one out and accelerate that piece. We can't tell you what that means other than it's a priority. But for sure, we know we need to get that restored first. For those residents that were here when that pond was built, stormwater pond, you remember there was no vegetation other than on the west end. You walk around that pond today and you can't see it when we're at full vegetation. The vast majority of that being invasive species wasn't there. And so that is releasing tremendous organic leaves into the pond, and that is one of the problems with that. And so we'll have to be working with the DNR, working on remediation. All of that is controlled by them. It's their body of water. So they're complex issues. My message today is to send you, we are working on it. We're very proactive. The funding is in place. We're actually optimistic there'll be enough funding when we're done to convert that levy, if you will, from building up the fund to hiring a full-time person using that existing levy, whose sole job will be to maintain that pond once it's fully restored and the water quality's back. So it just is always where it's supposed to be. Stay tuned, a lot more to come on stormwater. And so the next thing we're going to talk about is taking out the trash. And actually, this is coming from residents, and it's organized trash collection. And so the process has changed since the city last dipped their toe in the water back in 2011 or 12, maybe in 20, I'm not sure. But the state law has changed, and there's actually a process now that cities have to follow, and it begins by adopting a resolution saying you're interested. And that will then create an opportunity to have listening sessions. And so that's exactly what we intend to do, is have listening sessions. We believe that'll be on the March 27th council agenda, and so those meetings will happen shortly after that. We take all that input, and then there's an exclusive negotiation period that happens with the existing haulers, where they get an opportunity to propose a plan, where it's just one truck on that street on the collection day. There's an opportunity to negotiate almost an endless amount of things if you want, and that's where we'll be looking and doing the listening session. You want yard waste recycling once a week, once a month, once a year, you can negotiate that in. You want recycling once a week, once a month, once a year. You want composting at 3 different sites, all of those things. You want senior service where they come up to the garage door. You don't have to take your toter down. All those discussions come in. You can have in the negotiation, we want a local contact, okay? Some of these bigger firms, you may or may not, when you call a number, it may be somebody in Minneapolis, it may be somebody in a foreign country. So you get all of that information, you let the haulers come back with the proposal, and at that point, if there's an agreement, you just do the agreement, you have a 7-year contract in state law, it's a 7-year contract. If you don't, then you actually form a collections committee. And that would consist of a couple council people, a couple staff, and then a resident. And see if you can come up with a solution. You have to do this. So I was tasked with doing the research. I think I had over 500 pages in the council packet. There's pretty strong evidence, overwhelming I would argue, that you will save on the environment and you will save on your streets. There's not definitive, qualitative numbers on how much you'll save on street wear and tear, because you'd have to do a 20-year study and you'd have to have a control, and nobody's going to build a street that just has garbage trucks driving on it and cars to control it. But somewhere between 1 to 1,500 cars, so a garbage truck is equal to 1,500 cars a day, and other ones all the way up to 3,500 cars. So it's somewhere in between there, and the city's made a $35 million investments in their streets, and so looking at that, but again, looking at it from resident and then just from the impact on the environment and then back to our water quality. So of the 3 I've talked about, that's the one that's going to move the quickest, if you will, because just once you start the process, it begins moving. And certainly by the end of this summer, we would probably have, yes, there's interest in moving forward and getting a price. In the research I've done and put in the council packet, which is online, you go back and look at that. The cities that have it clearly experience savings over cities that don't. So if you're looking for savings in the pocketbook, this seems to be the way to at least do that exploration too. So again, more on this one later, just introducing it at this time.